gavel. It's a few minutes after 8. I think we may have one or two board members joining us, but we do have a quorum, so we'll get started. Roll call has probably occurred.
All set.
All right, thank you. And the item on our agenda for this special meeting of the Downtown Development Authority for Friday, April 1st, 2016, is consideration of aspects related to the Garland project. The official item on the agenda is consideration of concurring with the city engineer's recommendation to execute a contract with Elmer's Crane and Dozier to complete the Garland Street project. And Rob, I'll turn that over to you. Always a little difficult to concur with the city engineer, but maybe we can do that today.
Okay. I was going to go run after Marty, but I won't do that. Just tell him not to make those copies.
Okay.
Okay. Garland Street. First of all, I think it probably is worthwhile just to go back in history a little bit and talk about, how we got to this point. And really, of course, this project has been discussed for a very long time. This was in the 1997 TIF plan. It was conceived there. It was kind of formalized there. It's one of the projects in our 1997 TIF plan. But since that time, we've done a lot of talking about the warehouse district, which used to be called the Hall and Garland district, and this project. And for those of you who were around back in 2002, you may remember the Transforming the Hall and Garland District study that Gordy Frazier did. And this study really kind of identified the Hall and Garland area as a different district, that would have a different look than the Front Street district. So we did that in 2002. Then we had some things like, for example, we did a brainstorm back in 2006 that led to kind of firming up some of the design details. That led to a planning commission subcommittee, I believe it was called the Garland Street Subcommittee, that met a number of times, and again, talked more about the design of Garland Street. And that effort led to the guidelines for the request for proposals to hire the engineer. So that was done, I believe, in 2010. That started off with a charrette. We had a one-day charrette over at Inside Out Gallery, and that led to the first iterations of design. As we all know, the design firm went out of business. We had to hire a new design firm, Fleece and Vandenbrink. They kind of reconnected mainly with the property owners down in the Garland Street area twice in 2014 to further refine the designs, and then we get to today where we have final designs bid out and prices. So I just wanted to remind everyone of the long history of Garland Street. Just a couple of real quick discussion points about the design itself. We all know that the main purpose of Garland Street is to better connect the warehouse district with the Front Street area. And we've got two projects that are seeking to achieve that. One is the Pine Street Pedestrian Way, which is nearly done. It'll be done in May. And this is the other one. This one, of course, realigns Garland and connects it up with Union Street. But also, we wanted to, kind of in keeping with what we decided in this study, to make it a different kind of environment, we are making it a shared street, also called a Woonerf, Dutch term, which simply means that pedestrians and bicyclists will feel just as comfortable on the roadway as motorists will. And placemaking, and really, this is all about placemaking. It's more than just a street. It's really going to be, a place that people are drawn to. So that's just a little background on the project itself. Now, I wanted to just talk briefly about the funding. When the bids came in, we took a look at the budget, Bill Tweetmeyer and I, to try to identify where we are and what we need in terms of a loan, if anything. And we did determine that we do need a loan. I indicated in my memo that the figure it was $300,000. It's actually $400,000. Worst case scenario, we will need to borrow for 1 year, $400,000. We will be borrowing that. Let me just make sure, because we've gone back and forth as to the source. We are going to be borrowing from the TIF2 fund at an interest rate of 0.61%, which apparently is equivalent to the rate of a 1-year Treasury note. And again, that's if we need it. One of the things that we will be doing is we will go to Lighted Power on April 12th, and we'll be making a request for funding to the board. There's a memo on your desk that from Tim Lodge that indicates the dollar amount that we'll be requesting, and that dollar amount, at least in terms of request, is a little over $300,000. So obviously that'll help tremendously with us being able to pay for the project. It might possibly even negate the need for a loan, but we won't know until we actually know what that number is. So with that, I will turn it over to Tim to talk more about the bids and how they came in and how we've parsed that up and come up with a final number.
Tim Lodge, city engineer, and I prepared a 3-page memo. Couldn't make it any shorter. I tried, but we looked at we had 2 bids that were received. We looked at what happened with the bids. Why were they higher than the estimate? We identified a handful of areas. The main area is the decorative concrete cost, and in talking with the different contractors, the different subcontractors over the bid process, we do understand that the value that we had, that the engineer had in the estimate, were just plain too low. We also had environmental conditions, which were spelled out in a report that was commissioned by staff here for dealing with the known and unknown contaminants in the project area, and that's a number north of $50,000. So that really wasn't part of what we had thought about in terms of the cost estimate. But with that, we received 2 bids. We received a bid from Elmer's, and we received a bid from Crawford Construction. Both contractors are competent in those fields. Crawford Construction had the low base bid, but it was only $7,000 difference, which is very unusual on this size of project. We were very happy that the bottom line was very close. The way we get there, there's if you look at the Elmer's bid versus the Crawford bid, there's a number of items that are much higher and a number of items that are much lower. We take that into account because this is a unit price contract. So we look for, where are we going to see, any surprises down the road. So I included a column in the spreadsheet that we provided that talks about an analysis. So we could just get a real good look to do some prediction. If we're much less, for example, in the quantities that we projected, then we want to look at the contractor that has maybe some of the higher unit prices. Our typical process is that we overestimate our units by a handful, maybe 5%, and so we should hopefully see on this number as a maximum amount. Of course, with construction, there's always the oops and the what if. This was designed by a consultant, so I don't have the knowledge that I normally have in terms of how all of the details are put together, but we do feel comfortable in making a recommendation to Elmer's if we include a couple optional items. And the optional items that we're recommending is a dimming system for the lights. In looking at the details of the lights that were provided, the illumination levels are very bright, and we've experienced some concern on the brightness of lights in the urban areas. So the dimming system allows us to basically, just like your dining room dimmer, dim it down to an acceptable level. The range is from 0 to full. So we think that that's a worthwhile investment because we don't know. The LED lights are very unpredictable in terms of the illumination. The source of light is very bright, but the distance that we put the poles is about the same. So we have really bright light sources over the same distances. So we have a lot of bright and dark. So we really want to be able to adjust that system. The other two items that we're recommending to include is an outlet on the upper part of the pole, and that's for the decorative string lighting that was recommended in the Fleiss and Vandenbrink study. That's essentially Christmas lights stringed across the street. And then the other option that we're recommending to include is the convenience outlet or the event outlet at the base of the pole. And with all those, that flips the low bidder to Elmer's. They're low bid by about $11,000, and that's our recommendation. And so with that, I'd entertain any questions. There's a lot of information that we provided, and entertain any questions that you might have.
Jim?
On the lighting issue, I'm glad I'm hearing about the dimming feature. What about the number of poles? We've gotten a lot of feedback on the West Front Street. Is there going to be that many poles?
This is we went with this system, and it's a single pole system. It doesn't have the pedestrian scale lighting and the street lighting. It's all just one lighting. So the pole spacing,
They're higher.
high-level poles, 26 of them. The spacing is consistent with high-level poles, so you won't see all those features. Honestly, we just don't have the right-of-way and width to accommodate all of that, and the lighting illumination isn't necessary because the street is fairly narrow. The sidewalks are fairly narrow as well. We only have a 50-foot corridor, so we're fairly restricted. So the lighting need is not as great as in some other instances.
Okay, and I noticed in the spreadsheet you gave us of the numbers, the decorative, is it stamped concrete?
Yes.
That came in really high.
Yes.
And I know that was in negotiation with the visitor center. Is that still, do we have to do the decorative concrete?
That's not part of the visitor center deal. The visitor center deal was more the area. The surfacing was always going to be some sort of stamped and decorative concrete.
I mean, it looks nice, but it's a big cost, and it looks like it's come in, that's one of the items that you have highlighted has come in way over budget.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something we want to pursue. I mean,
Well, we looked at that. So the option that I'd like to do is some sort of paver brick, or if you want to go to the least expensive, like in the 200 block alley, we just put asphalt in. If I look at this and break it down by the actual cost, it's still much cheaper than brick, and it's not that much more expensive than just conventional pavement. So it's a really tough area to be in, and what we're demanding out of the contractor is to stamp concrete in a, if you look at the pattern that we provided, stamp concrete and build it with a centerline joint and a curve change in pattern that goes down the entire length. So they have to prepare forms, and there's going to be a lot of waste to be able to develop this scenario that they can actually stamp the patterns. And so it's really in the design that the costs start to come up. And this is our discussions that we had with the concrete folks during the bidding process, is that, hey, you just can't go out and do what we normally do. We have to really carefully figure this out. One, it's a very restricted environment, so they're going to have to pump most of the concrete in. And two, with the shape, with that curve down the center line, which is a great aesthetic aspect because it's going to give different texture as you look down the street. It won't give a linear texture as you go down the street. It's going to be tough to figure out how to build that. It's going to be very small concrete pours and that. So this is a reflection, I think, of the work that's actually required. We looked at the bids. There is a little bit of difference between the two contractors, but we did have a lot more involvement with the contractor that is a subcontractor for Elmer's. They asked a lot of questions. It was a daily thing, and we feel very comfortable with their skills and their abilities.
Would doing colored concrete give us the same effect without the stamping?
This is colored concrete and stamped concrete.
I mean, is there a difference if we just colored it and didn't stamp it?
We could look at that, yes.
I mean, would that bring the cost down?
It would likely bring the cost down, but I think it would also change the impact of the aesthetics. I mean, if we're going to do that, I'd go back to, let's just put curb and gutter and asphalt in. So.
Are we prepping for stormwater collection stuff with this?
Yeah, actually, that's all part of the Hotel Indigo process. We worked out with them, and we've actually created a storm drainage district. We've actually collected some proceeds from penalties from Hotel Indigo, and our intent is to apply that to build end-of-the-pipe treatment system in parking lot X for this district. So we think that stormwater-wise, we're in pretty good shape. That'll be part of a process. We may even, we may attach it to this project, or we may attach it to the Pine Street Pedestrian Bridge project with funding to come from that other source.
And I guess, and we're still working with Light and Power on the funding.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of good conversation. One thing I didn't point out in my discussion is that, the light poles that were selected they're really fun and funky. They're really super expensive. And I can, in good conscience, based on the lighting projects that we've done in the last 10 years and the light standards that we use typically for Light and Power, I can't recommend to you to spend $13,000 for a light fixture. That doesn't make any sense. It's up to 5 times what a candy cane pole costs, or a street lighting costs. It's just not a. I can't see the payback on that. I think there are ways to create the aesthetic style that we want, and Light and Power has engaged, which is great. Their staff is looking and helping us, try to find a unique fixture for this environment, and so I'm encouraged by that. We just haven't completed that. We needed to see where the bids were coming in, and we kind of got an idea where the bids were going to come in, a couple weeks ago, so we really started working hard with Light and Power to come up with some alternatives. Like I said, it won't be what everybody has seen and what it was in the bid, but it will be something that will pay respect to the aesthetic style that we want to see down there.
And my last question is, you have traffic control stuff in here too. Have we talked, some of the neighboring businesses, they're going to have a real concern with the construction process. Are we working with them with alternatives? And I know it's going to be difficult, but is there ways to work to get traffic in and out to these folks' businesses along this stretch while construction's happening?
Yeah, I'm in a box of wants and needs, and I'd love to be able to say that, I think the best thing that I'm going to say is let's peel the Band-Aid off quick and let's just get it done. Let's close it down. Let's minimize access, get the contractor starting from the west end, moving to the east. If we get through the area just past where the sidewalk comes in between the inside-out gallery, we get past the businesses that are there as a priority. I'm hoping that we can open that up to traffic earlier, local traffic primarily, but keeping in mind that we still need to implement this project, and the extreme east end is still some T's to cross and some I's to dot. So we're going to try to get Hull Street done. We're going to try to get the west end of Garland Street done, and that's where we've indicated that in our progress clause to the contractors. Once we hopefully have an award on Monday night, we'll start working with the contractor right away. We'll start talking to property owners. I'm
So
pretty
we are
sure
going to
they
go
know.
out and talk to property owners? and
Yeah,
make
pretty
sure
sure,
that-
sure they know the pain is coming. We're going to try our best, but the bottom line I see is that we just need to get in there and realistically control everything, get all the underground in. The biggest wild card that we don't have a prediction on is what is the environmental consequences when we start digging. And I just want to get that started and get that out of the way. And we have a storm sewer that's running down the street, and that's the biggest thing that's going to hold us up. And then the contractor, the concrete guy, can get in and start putting things back. We've briefly talked with some property owners, and we're trying to decide, should we delay this, should we do this? And realistically, I think everybody, while it isn't desirable to interrupt the flow, it's better just to get it done and let's move on. We've had a lot of interruption down there, and I just hate to extend that another business season. I just as soon get that done and get out of there.
The good news
Okay,
is
thank
we've
you.
been talking about this for so long and so many times we know what all the issues are
Yeah.
with the businesses, and got some ideas on how to address them.
Tim, can I, just to expand on a comment that Jim made, when you were showing me how this all came together earlier this week, we were talking about the cement and that's more expensive. But if we were to redesign, we wouldn't be able to do the project now. And the conversation we had was that the trade-off of waiting in either looking at asphalt or other possibilities would probably be a break-even difference in terms of the bidding that we could anticipate.
We would be going into an unknown bidding environment.
Right.
Having bids within 0.5% on a job this size is pretty remarkable.
Well, I'm not saying change
So-
I'm not saying, maybe just not do the stamping of the colored concrete. I mean, still go through with the plan. I'm just, would that make it cheaper
Well,
or still give us the effect that we're going for?
I don't think it would achieve the desired aesthetic effect for the Wooner that, the idea is to create a pathway that is confusing for a motorist. And I don't think that plain concrete would do that. That's, the idea is that it's just like we talked about, in front of the library, in front of NMC, you look and you say, do I really, do I need to go down that? And that's kind of the thought, is that we need to create a pattern that just doesn't look inviting in terms of motor vehicles, but it looks inviting. Well, what's happening down there? So we think that the combination of things that we're talking about, will create that enthusiasm, along with the exciting redevelopment and the recent redevelopment that's occurred and the redevelopment that's being discussed.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I wasn't being critical. It's a cost that stands out, but it would probably be a delay in the project.
Tim, maybe you alluded to this, but on the environmental issues, is there a possibility we could run into some of the same things down at the west end that Indigo ran into?
According to the study that we've done, no.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it all really, the groundwater was the big thing on Indigo. And we've done everything that we can possibly think of to miss the groundwater. But until we actually start digging to see where things are, when the last time we did, monitoring well checks, lake levels were down quite a bit. So, we're going to have to be aware of that. Most everything that we have is shallow. We have talked to both contractors, and both contractors were willing to work with us if there's a design element that they're saying, this is kind of stupid, why are we doing this? We could do this a different way, create some value engineering. Both of the contractors have committed to doing that. So, we really need to open up the west end and see where the groundwater's at, and then make an assessment there. We are actually in process of engaging quotes from 3 environmental consultants to perform that. I hope to have that online for the City Commission meeting on the 18th. Unfortunately, the firm that we thought would do the work didn't respond, and it was, by the time I realized they weren't going to respond, it was too late to try to get this packaged for this meeting and for the meeting Monday night. So we're asking 3 local environmental firms to give us prices for doing the environmental compliance monitoring.
And just for the newer members, we, the DDA, we've actually done a lot of due diligence already for this project. We've done a, phase 1, phase 2, and we've done a due care plan and a construction management plan. So we paid, we've spent a lot of money on environmental due care, or environmental due diligence, I should say, for this project. And also, thanks to Gene Dorenzi, there might possibly be some dollars, grant dollars available if we do happen to run into some soil down there.
Any other questions?
I have one just from being newer. I was asking Robin, he's like, it's a good question for Tim. How often are the estimates and bids that far off that, from original estimate? Is that normal, or is that?
It's been more normal than lately than it's ever been. Contracting in northern Michigan in our particular district, there are constraints with the number of contractors that we have. We've adopted, and we actually go through the Builders Exchange in Northwest Michigan, so we get statewide exposure. If you look at the list of people that looked at the plans, it's pretty solid. There's 30, 40 different contractors of different aspects looking at them. So it's the willingness to adhere to a tight schedule and other things that starts to, reduce that and the available amount of work in the region. I think if you look across the board, there's just a few of the items that are out of scale, but they're really out of scale. So, that's, you could look at 107 items, and I've got 6 items that are out of scale. So, that's part of the process. You look at it. If I had, 30% of the items out of scale, then my recommendation may be, hey, let's just rebid this thing. Let's figure out why is this, why are we missing something, and maybe we change the design.
Got it.
But the few items are, I think I can easily understand where the risk is. The risk on the contractor for the environmental compliance, the risk on the dirt, so the earthwork is a higher price because, you know, that could be a big thing. Decorative concrete pavement and decorative concrete sidewalk, as I've explained, it isn't like what we did on Front Street where we just threw a bunch of concrete in a hole that's, you know, a rectangle or whatever. This is a pretty elaborate pattern. There's a fan pattern that you have to then put on a curve. And so how do you make that look like it's an actual installation? You know, they gave us pictures that showed us brick streets in Europe, and I'm sorry, but this isn't going to be a brick street. It's going to be a stamped concrete, and so, you know, it's going to be difficult to get it right. I'm going to guess that the first couple times they're going to be doing it and probably ripping it out because we're not going to be happy with it. We're going to do some patterns and try to figure it out, but it's going to be some trial and error on that. So, and I would expect that price to reflect that then.
Okay, thanks.
One more, I mean, I'm just looking at the decorative lighting policy we have with Light and Power. So the executive director has approved the lights that we're using?
Negative. We're asking them to come up with lights at this time.
Okay, so they're going to come up with it.
We
And they're
hope.
considering dark sky and, or whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, our lights are dark sky compliant. Yes, the Front Street lights are dark sky compliant. For those that keep asking me, are they dark sky compliant? They actually are manufactured by the company that pioneered dark sky compliant lighting, so the KIP lighting fixtures that we have on Front Street are.
Because, I mean, there's the policy talks about if it's not a candy cane or an acorn light, it's up to the executive director to approve them.
Yep,
Okay.
working on it.
Good questions. Anything else? Okay.
I just want to go back to, well, I want to talk about the motion. The motion that I included in here needs one more element to it, and that is reference to the loan. So if I
Would you
may-
read it? Are you going to read it for us?
I'm
or-
going to read it for you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll start from the very beginning. I'm going to read what I had already included in the memo, and then I'm going to add in some additional language. So I'll just read the whole thing. So the recommendation is that the DDA Board of Directors concur with the city engineers' March 29, 2016 recommendation that the work be awarded to Elmer's and that the proper city officials be authorized to execute a contract with the above-mentioned low bidder in the amount of $1,639,379.15, more or less, and further, that up to $1,810,379.15 be allocated of TIF 97 fund for said contract, consultant contracts, and contingency, contingent upon staff requesting funding assistance from Traverse City Light and Power for lighting and related costs, and further, that the TIF 97 fund receives an interfund loan from the TIF 2 fund in the amount of $400,000 for the period of 1 year at an interest rate of 0.61%, which is equivalent to the rate of a 1-year Treasury note in order to provide the funds necessary for TIF 97 to pay for this project.
Should that be a not to exceed 400,000?
I think that's fine, yeah, because we may not need that total amount. So we could, yes, we could say not to exceed.
Okay. For clarity, can I ask you to read that one more time?
Sure.
And then someone can simply adopt that motion.
Wait, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
How often do we borrow money from the other TIF to pay for other projects? Is that a,
We've never actually borrowed from the other TIF, but we have borrowed in the past when we did River's Edge. The TIF 2 fund borrowed from what is now the Economic Development Fund
okay,
to get some things done. So we
Okay.
have borrowed money in the past.
okay. Thanks.
Okay, would you like me to read it again?
I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
If no one else does.
So the motion is that the DDA Board of Directors concur with the city engineer's March 29th, 2016 recommendation that this work be awarded to Elmer's and that the proper city officials be authorized to execute a contract with the above-mentioned low bidder in the amount of $1,639,379.15, more or less, and further that up to $1,810,379.15 be allocated of TIF 97 funds for said contract, consultant contracts, and contingency contingent upon staff requesting funding assistance from Traverse City Light and Power for lighting and related costs. And further, that the TIF 97 fund receives an interfund loan from the TIF 2 fund in an amount not to exceed $400,000 for the period of 1 year at an interest rate of 0.61%, which is equivalent to the rate of a 1-year Treasury note, in order to provide the funds necessary for TIF 97 to pay for this project.
Thank you.
And just a correction that the memo is March 28th, minor correction.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, is anyone prepared to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we do have a motion with support, as read into the record twice. Any further questions? Yeah, Mike.
Just hit me. Rob, how do we, maybe it's obvious, how do you pay back the loan?
So the loan is paid back mainly because, see, what's happening is we are doing 2 huge projects this year. That's what's
Right.
draining our fund balance.
Right.
And next year, we are not. Next year, we've got a bridge to do,
Right.
and we, really, we just have the bridge. And that is it, because we've got, farmer's market is not being done next year.
It's a simple answer.
So
Okay.
we've only got $400,000
Okay.
of capital
I got it.
outlay.
It's just the income, the tax recapture that gives
Yep.
it back.
Right. Yeah, on Monday, we took a look at some of the projected expenditures over the next year, what the likelihood of those were, and
Yeah.
Rob felt that easily within a year it could be repaid back.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking that. I was assuming that, but I'm glad it was clarified.
It's been good discussion.
Now, I should mention that on the 15th, we have this, possible snow melt project. That would, that's a whole new project, and, when we consider that, we'll know where Light and Power is by then, but I just want to mention that, we're going to have to talk about, if we want to proceed with that, how we're going to pay for it, so.
Is the ability to do snow melt in this area being built in for the future? I mean, I don't know.
Not for this project, but I guess I'm referring to the 200
Yeah,
block snow
yeah.
melt
I'm
project.
just saying, in the future, if we're going to expand snow melt, is there anything that you can prep now in case we are able to do it later? I don't know, I mean.
That would be
That's
at
infrastructure,
an
there's a lot of
additional,
stuff that you'd have
quite
to put
a
under
bit of
the
an additional
sidewalks,
cost.
but I don't know, okay.
Yeah.
I thought Rick committed to 15 years of shoveling down there. All right, any further questions or comments? We do have a motion, it has support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Tim, thanks for all the work, and Rob, you as well.
I will point out that Fleiss and Vandenbrink is a consultant doing the majority of the design work, so I just get to carry some of the burden. So.
No, Tim and Lauren have done a whole lot of work, as have some of you board members, so I appreciate all the team effort on getting this thing moving ahead.
That's a good point. I mean, when we're looking at the final bidding, but we've lived with this project for quite a while. A lot went in with TC Tourism, Marty and Lauren. Never lost faith and got things through, so thank you very much.
That's what we got.
Rob, is there anything else that we should be considering generally today?
No, I just want to mention the May 6th study session. Thank you for, your responses. It sounds like that is going to work for almost everyone, so I think we'll go ahead and plan on doing the May 6th study session to talk about housing.
Will you send that out so that?
I will send out a
Meeting notice, so good.
Yep, I'll send that out, but I just wanted to mention that.
All right, any public comment? Looks like not any further comment from the board. All right, thank you for coming in for a special meeting. We're adjourned, and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
May 8th?
May 6th.